Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corporal Ellis. I'm going to be doing the presentation today on effective listening and leader. A little bit about myself. I served for 4 years in the Marine Corps as a machine gunner. I then became a machine gun squad leader. So I was in charge of 2 machine guns and 6 Marines. I did 1 tour of duty in Afghanistan in 2009 and then did a MEU with the Navy in 2011 to 2012, which a MEU is a Marine Expeditionary Unit where you go out with the Navy and float around and wait for something to happen. I got out of the Marine Corps in 2012 and decided I kind of missed the military. So fast forward 6 years, I tried to go back in. It was taking too long, so I decided to talk to a Army recruiter, and here I am. So first, let's cover a little bit of safety. If there is an emergency or anything like that should happen, everybody please get up, walk, do not run. The exit is here. We'll go outside, get accountability, and then go from there. So let's get this started. The agenda of this presentation is going to cover 3 topics. It's going to cover the process of communication. It's going to cover the difference between hearing and listening. And it's going to cover the 3 different types of listening. Then we're going to have a conclusion, and then I'll answer some questions at the end. So let's look at a basic overview of what these 3 topics are. The process of communication. It's going to cover 3 areas: written communication, nonverbal communication, and verbal communication. Then we're going to move on to the difference between hearing and listening. What is the difference between hearing what somebody says and listening to what they say? Then we're going to cover the 3 different types of listening. That's informative, critical, and empathetic. So let's start this off with the process of communication. First, we have written communication. Now, written communication, that's going to be your letters, your memos, your texts, stuff like that. Something that you can write down, and it makes it easy to mass produce and send out to a lot of people. Now, the only problem with written communication is you don't really know if your audience is hearing or listening to what you're saying. Now we have nonverbal communication. Now, nonverbal communication, that's going to be your body language, your tone of voice. Are they making eye contact with you? Lastly, we have verbal communication. Those are your spoken words. Now, verbal communication and nonverbal communication can kind of go hand in hand. If you're kind of on a conversation with somebody, you can take their nonverbal body language cues to be able to tell if they're actually listening to you or maybe they're just hearing what you're saying. So with verbal communication, the process of this is you're sending out a coded message to somebody. They're receiving that coded message, decoding it, and then are able to respond back to you in an appropriate way. Oh, goodness. Now we're going to move on to the difference between hearing and listening. We've all had that situation where we're talking to somebody and they're hearing us, but they're not really listening to us. So hearing is sound waves are received by the listener, but because they're not paying attention to us, those sound waves aren't being decoded. They're not paying attention to what you're saying. But when you listen to somebody, the listener receives those coded sound waves, they decode them, and then they're able to respond back to you in an appropriate manner. Now let's move on to the 3 different types of listening. We'll start out with informative. Informative listening is listening to collect knowledge. Whether you're listening to the news to find out what's happened today, you're listening to a mission brief so you know what part of the mission you're going to be a part of. Then we have critical listening. Now critical listening, that's, let's say for example, two soldiers are having a verbal disagreement about something. You can approach that situation, talk to each one of them individually, and then decide which judgment you should go with in that argument. Then we have empathetic listening. Now I think empathetic listening is probably one of the most important types of listening skills that you can learn. Empathetic listening lets you put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're empathizing with. Let's say, for example, a soldier comes up to you and they tell you their dog died. That soldier is going to be pretty upset. If you're empathetic towards them, you'll have a better understanding of how to give him advice on how to move forward in that situation. So in conclusion, how can we take this information and use it to become better leaders and more importantly, or better listeners and more importantly, better leaders? It starts with understanding the different types of communication. And not just hearing our soldiers, but listening to them. Some of us might actually learn something from our soldiers if we simply listen to them. And understanding the 3 different types of listening that each situation requires. All of this will make us better leaders and will make our units more resilient. I'd like to finish off with a quote from John Baldoni. The roots of effective leadership lie in simple things, one of which is listening. Listening to someone demonstrates respect. It shows that you value their ideas and are willing to hear them. So at this point, if I have any questions, I'll take them now. And no questions, then have a nice day.